Alright, today let's make some Turkish Delights, or as it's originally known, Lokum. Fun fact, these confections were apparently what inspired the creation of jelly beans, so it seems like a pretty ideal time to be making it. In North America, these are typically sold with red food coloring and rosewater as a flavoring, but in reality they actually come in a variety of flavors and colors. So the version I went into today will be flavored with vanilla, almond, and pistachio, and I have it covered with coconut, but I'll give you some tips on how to change the flavor if you want. Alright, with all of that being said, let's make some Turkish Delights. To make Turkish Delights, we need to make two different things. One is a cornstarch liquid/paste, which will cook into a gel and give the lokum their texture. And the second is a sugar syrup that will sweeten the gel and also adds a bit of chewiness and resistance when we bite into it. So let's actually start with the sugar syrup. Start by adding 4 cups or 804 grams of sugar to 1.5 cups or about 350 milliliters of water. I know this probably seems like a lot of sugar, but the recipe makes quite a bit of the candy. Alright, we're going to begin heating this over high heat, and I'm going to give this one quick mix to ensure that all of the sugar is saturated. After this, we want to let it heat up without stirring. To prevent the sugar from crystallizing and falling out of solution, we can also add a little bit of cream of tartar, about a teaspoon, but as long as you don't stir the sugar too much as it heats up, it should be fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat this sugar syrup until it reaches about 240 degrees Fahrenheit or 115 degrees Celsius. This is what's known as the softball stage of candy making, meaning that if you cool this sugar syrup down, it'll have kind of the consistency of a chewy, almost like taffy or caramel chew. This will give our Turkish Delights that little bit of chewiness I mentioned earlier, and it will balance out that gel texture of the cooked cornstarch. So once we do finally reach 240 degrees Fahrenheit, we want to pull this off to the side. However, we do want to keep this warm while we work, so it might be good to just place this into a warm oven, or alternatively, you could be working on another burner with the cornstarch so that you get this done at the same time. Okay, speaking of which, now it's time to look at the cornstarch portion of this. Place a pot over medium heat and add about 2 3/4 cups of water, or about 650 milliliters, and mix in 1 1/4 cup of cornstarch, or about 160 grams. Go ahead and try to stir these two together and be patient when you first start beginning to stir the slurry. At first, it won't really seem like it's coming together, but almost by magic, after a few seconds of stirring, it will suddenly become a nice, what is known as slurry. I tried to use a whisk at first, but this was folly, and ended up seeing that really the only way to do this is with a wooden spatula. When the cornstarch is heated in the water, the starch granules will swell up with water and then eventually actually rupture, and the carbohydrates inside will start to stick to each other, creating a gel, thickening the liquid that they're in. This means as we heat the cornstarch, it will rapidly thicken as the starch granules explode. So what this will mean practically is that you'll notice that the water and starch will just suddenly become thick like this. And at that point, we're ready to actually pour our sugar syrup in. But we want to do this little by little, and we want to do this while we stir, making sure that we've incorporated the syrup thoroughly into the cornstarch mixture. Once we actually get this mixed thoroughly, the name of the game now is just to cook this for about half an hour. During this time, we'll cook the starch, just further cementing this gel. So at this point, we're just going to let this simmer over medium heat for about 30 minutes. We're going to return every 5 minutes or so to stir it and just check in on it. If you notice that this is browning a lot between check-ins, you may want to turn your heat down. We don't want this to burn, but honestly, sitting there for 30 minutes stirring this stuff constantly is kind of an unreasonable ask. Over the course of the half hour of cooking the cornstarch mixture, it will progressively take on a golden hue. It should go from being completely opaque to clear. And we should know that basically when it's completely clear and it's got this golden texture, we're done with the cooking, and it's actually time to start flavoring our Turkish Delights. Now, as I said at the top, traditionally this is flavored with rosewater, but that's not really my favorite flavor, so today I'm going to be flavoring this with pistachios and just adding those in, some vanilla, and a little bit of almond extract. Now, feel free to add whatever you want. Some other possible options could be cinnamon or peppermint, and also feel free to add whatever nuts you want to just kind of give some textural difference. Just thoroughly mix in your flavors, and we're gonna let this cool. Now, this stuff is as sticky as all get out, so we need to lubricate a pan for the stuff to cool in. I'm using aluminum foil and cooking spray in a baking tray. Now, aluminum foil works, but it's not ideal. It'd be much better to use something like parchment paper or even wax paper if you have it. And this will kind of prevent you from having to deal with what I had to deal with, where you're kind of removing aluminum foil flecks as you're pulling it off, but I'll leave this up to you. If all you have is aluminum foil, it'll work. All right, now we're ready to pour the molten Turkish Delights from our pot into the container of your choice. Go ahead and make sure that you take an extra second to kind of spread this out, making sure it's an even layer as possible. Don't worry if it looks too ugly. They will be coated later, so if you see some weird structure or anything like that, you can try to remove it, but don't obsess about it. It's gonna be coated, and it's gonna be kind of hard to tell anyways. Once everything's spread out, place it into the fridge for at least an hour, and hopefully by then it should be completely set. If it hasn't, just leave it in there for a little bit longer. Once it is set, go ahead and remove it from the fridge, and it's time to coat. And this coating will just kind of just remove that sticky edge off the edge of the Turkish Delights. So I decided to coat mine in a mixture of equal parts powdered sugar and coconut shreds. I used about a cup of each. But if you decide that coconut isn't your jam, You can also mix about 1/2 cup of cornstarch with 1 cup of powdered sugar, and this will give you that common coating to Turkish Delights that you normally see. Coat the top of the Turkish Delights that we pulled out of the fridge and just flip this over and begin cutting the cubes. Just cut them into the cubes of whatever size you want, and to help kind of facilitate the cutting, I used a little cooking spray on the actual knife itself, which kind of seemed to work very well, so I recommend that. Once we have all of our little cubes, we can go ahead and toss them into the coating bowl and just really make sure that they're coated entirely so they don't stick to each other. And once we're coated, that's it. You know, feel free to decorate as you see fit, and that's basically Turkish Delights. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to subscribe or share the video. All right, I hope to see you guys again soon. All right, bye.